They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, y'all? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So, it's been the talk of the NBA this week. The Dallas Mavericks are on, I believe, a 6-game losing streak. They have not been super impressive over their last couple, and people are questioning how good this team can actually be, considering that a couple people had them as potential even title contenders. The most optimistic were like, yeah, this team is good enough, especially if Luka is playing at an MVP level, they can maybe even push to try to win a title. Not like one of the favorites, but, you know, maybe a top 10 title contender team, as well as Luka Doncic being the MVP favorite in the preseason. You know, the favorite or like top 2 to 3 at worst, right? A lot of people had him picked as their MVP. And for me, I was a little bit skeptical of the Mavericks to start the year. And in the preseason and over the offseason, I was not super high on this team, as high as a couple other people were, because it was like, oh man, they might be the 3 seed, they might be the 4 seed in the Western Conference, and they're gonna destroy everybody, and Luka's gonna come back and he's gonna be awesome in his 3rd year and all this stuff. And I have a couple of reasons why I thought the Mavericks weren't gonna be as good as some people thought this year. And I just want to go over that pretty quickly, like some of the reasons why I think Dallas is struggling, and just keep in mind that it is still early, right? Obviously, there's still plenty of time for them to turn it around, and I don't expect that they will be this bad. I definitely think that this team should make the playoffs when all things are said and done, but right now they're not in a playoff position. So, but yeah, it's still early, so let's just keep in mind that things are obviously subject to change, but as of right now, the Mavericks are not playing super well. So the first thing that I thought of was that I didn't really feel like Luka could make a huge leap between year 2 and year 3. Now, obviously, you know, he's going to get a little bit better, and that's what happens with all young players, and he's still only, 21 years old this year, so he still has, you know, upward trajectory, right? He's going to be even better. I don't believe we've seen the best of Luka Doncic, but specifically from year 2 to year 3, I wasn't expecting a huge jump from him, and that's for a couple reasons. First of all, I felt like last season was like obviously one of the best seasons we've seen from somebody at his age, and so I feel like he kind of peaked a little bit earlier, like his first peak happens a little bit earlier than a couple of other players because he was so experienced playing Eurobasket, and he had, you know, been around the game for a long time, and he transitioned to the NBA very well. So I felt like I said, I don't believe this is his peak, but like in players' careers, they kind of have like a first peak, like on their rookie contract, where they end up being really good, kind of hover around that level for a couple years, and then like go way up when you hit like 26, 27 years old, like your physical prime. That's when players are usually like at their peak of their power. So I felt like Luka's first peak happened a little bit earlier than some other players did, and that's why he was so good in his second season, and credit to him for that. But I don't feel like there was a huge way for him to go in his 3rd year. Like, what realistically can he get that much better at, right? He's one of the best passers in the league. He is an okay shooter. Like, yes, he can always improve as a shooter, and I think he will over the next couple of years. But the other thing that I felt like might hold him back is just because the offseason was so short for him. The Mavericks were one of those teams in the bubble, of course, and they played, you know, August, like July and August was their bubble time, and maybe even into September. I don't remember when the first round was over, but the Mavericks were there for a while, and so that gives Luka about, like, what is that, like 3 months for the offseason, like, you know, 3-4 months for an offseason, which isn't a super long time, and especially in the time period that we're living in now, it's a little harder to get out and practice and really spend a ton of time in the offseason working on your game. So for Luka, I just felt like he didn't have a ton of time in order to really improve over the offseason. The offseason kind of happened in between, you know, the end of the, like, when the season got postponed into the bubble, and I felt like he did improve some between those 2 times, but I just didn't feel like there was a huge leap to be made for Luka specifically this year. I still think there is another level he can get to. Like I said, he's going to get better, but specifically from year 2 to year 3, don't feel like there was a ton of room for improvement for him, so that's kind of why I felt like the ceiling of the Mavericks wasn't going to go up as much as some other people thought it would. And then the other thing is obviously Porzingis' injury, and we've seen that bear out, right? He missed the first couple of games of the year. First couple of weeks he didn't play, and since he's been back, he hasn't looked awesome. He's still working his way back from that injury. He's not playing at 100% right now, and that's all expected. But that's the reality of the Mavericks season is they're missing their second best player for the first month or so of the season, and even when he's back, he kind of is working his way back to full strength. So regardless of that, Porzingis being out and missing time was going to hurt them early on, and it has, but he hopefully, once he gets back, playing at his normal level, the Mavericks can potentially be a little bit better once Porzingis is back to 100%, but for the first month of the year, it makes sense that they would struggle with him out. And also, they didn't really change their team that much from last year. And we kind of saw them trend last season. If you remember, they kind of started off the season very well. The first month or two of last season, they were playing really well above 500 and one of the top seeds in the Western Conference. And then they had a Dwight Powell injury and a couple other things change on their roster. And they were about a 500 team from I think about December or January to the end of the year. They won as much as they lost. So it wasn't like they were world beaters. It wasn't like they were destroying everybody. They started off really hot, gave them enough of a cushion to still be able to stay afloat there in the West, and then kind of were okay. They were very mediocre for the rest of the season, and then had that strong bubble run, right? Luka had those really awesome performances in the first round against the Clippers, but the reality is they were a 7 seed, and they didn't really make too many changes to upgrade this roster. The biggest thing they did was swapping out Josh Richardson for Seth Curry, and I've made my case on that trade why I think I like that a lot better for Philly than I did for Dallas, and I think that's actually been something that's hurt them so far. As a lot of people were like, well, the Mavericks already have a lot of shooting on the roster, and so they're going to be okay without Seth Curry. And for me, I disagree with that because, one, I don't feel like you can ever have too much shooting in the NBA. I just really don't. I feel like the Mavericks were a team that really relied on Seth Curry a lot to be able to hit shots, especially when their stars weren't hot. With Kristaps and Luka, both of them have started the season pretty slow from 3 this year, and I think that's been part of the big reason why they're on this losing streak. And I've seen some stats about this where they've been 30% or lower for all of these games in the losing streak or something like that. Maybe most of them. I'm not sure the exact statistic. But they aren't shooting the 3-ball well right now, and that's part of the reason why they're losing. Luka himself has been one of the worst 3-point shooters on high volume so far to open this season. I think he'll get better, as the season goes along. Usually with players like this, they'll go through slumps, but eventually he'll figure it out, right? But for Luka, if he's not shooting well, Porzingis hasn't been shooting well, then nobody else on this roster is really going to bail them out. Josh Richardson's an okay shooter, Maxi Kleber's an okay shooter. They've got a couple of other guys, Tim Hardaway is pretty good. He's been hitting some shots. But other than that, they don't really have these knockdown shooters on this team. And Seth Curry was that for them. He was absolutely on fire, pretty much all of last season. And so far this year with the Sixers, he's been on fire. And so I felt like they really needed him to be able to come in. And especially now with the rest of the team being cold, I think they're missing Seth a lot more than a lot of people thought that they would. And that's one that I called before the season because I felt like Seth Curry was a really important piece for them. And even though Josh Richardson is a good player, I still feel like Seth probably raises the ceiling of your team a little bit more than Josh Richardson does. And so other than that trade, they didn't really change anything, and in my opinion, that trade made them worse. So as a 7 seed last year, didn't really change much. People are just banking on internal improvement from Luka and Porzingis. Both of those guys I felt like didn't really have a ton of room to improve specifically this year. So where does that leave us with the rest of the Western Conference getting better? Around them, there's plenty of other teams like the Warriors with Steph Curry back healthy and the Suns trading for Chris Paul and all these other teams, right, around the Western Conference that have gotten better from last year. And whereas Dallas has sort of, not really done much with their offseason, and they're just, like I said, banking on internal improvement. And while that, that can still happen and it can still bear out, I just didn't really see a reason why this team was going to be that much better than last year. And so it does kind of make sense to me why they haven't been winning a ton so far. Now their record's sitting at 8-13. That is surprising. That's that's less than a lot of people thought. They haven't been as incredible, even as I would have thought. Right? I thought they'd be around 500 at this point of the year, maybe a little bit better than that. In that pack in the West right now with the Rockets and the Warriors, Spurs, Grizzlies. There's tons of teams right there that are right around 500. And I thought the Mavericks would be kind of in that group. But it turns out that they have not been even up to that level. So like I said, there's still plenty of time for them to turn it around, and I think that they will. I think when all is said and done, they're probably still a playoff team. You know, I would anticipate them being at least in the play-in game, if not getting up to that 6th seed. I think is still a possibility for them, but we'll just have to see. And the shooting thing has really hurt them so far. Usually the teams go through cold stretches, and they can still come around. And certainly with a lot of their players shooting below their averages from 3, you would expect those to come up at some point. But yeah, that's kind of the reason that the Mavericks are losing, and the reason why I thought that they weren't going to be super awesome this year. And so it's just been interesting to watch them so far. So I think that's all I got for you on the Dallas Mavericks. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you think about the Mavericks. Why are they losing right now? Are they going to turn it around? Would love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. But yeah, with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.